Welcome to the Injector's Business Blueprint, the show that helps you build a profitable and thriving med spa practice. Here, we don't just talk about overcoming med spa growth challenges, we equip you with firsthand accounts of what we did to help ourselves and our clients build profitable and sustainable practices they love. The next step in building a practice you love starts right now. A needle, some product, and a willing patient sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. Join us as we unpack why aesthetic injections are actually rocket science and why your provider's training could be the difference between subtle enhancement and complete disaster. We're bringing back the professionalism to aesthetics as we discuss training, education, and compensation. Hi there. Welcome back to the Injector Business Blueprint, where we aim to make the journey of med spa ownership a little less lonely. So today, Brandon and I are going to dive in about education, training, compensation for your team and sharing our experiences to align those goals with your business strategy.
Such a loaded topic. And for those that are not having the pleasure of looking at us, we chose the same color top today, which was a complete accident. So you should subscribe to our YouTube channel if you aren't already, because we are a cranberry delight today, aren't we?
I love it. It's so funny because, like, I was saying to you just before we started recording, I never wear this top. So
Yeah,
I don't know, something we're on a vibe today. And
I love
because
it.
we're on a vibe, I know it's going to be a great show and we're going to get out a message to people that they've got to hear. So let's dive in.
100%. So, one of my favorite topics is talking about training and education because I get asked all the time, like not only from a practice manager perspective, but I am a registered nurse. So everyone is always like, how do I become an injector? How do I get into aesthetics? What do I need to do? When do I get my certification? All the things. And there is no clear cut answer. Everyone gets into this industry in a different way, and just to get us started, I think that the number one key takeaway that I want to impress upon everybody is that you really have to have hustle and grit to get into this industry. Obviously, you need to abide by your state rules and regulations as to what defines your practice of medicine. And this is not intended to be legal advice. So please seek out someone much smarter than us. And they are, within their pay grade, because that's way above ours. But you do need to fight and make your own resume, as I like to say, in this industry, because it's not like you go to a weekend injection course that's offered, you get a certificate, and you are done. The learning never stops. You have to invest in yourself. You have to build your own resume. You have to go to conferences. You have to network. Again, my favorite saying, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah, you have to do all of that stuff. So it's listening to podcasts, it's watching Patreons, it's going to those weekend educational conferences. Now, they're not all bad. I can't poo poo them all, but you have to really be selective and create a network where you can ask questions like, is this a good one? Does it have a certification? Just because you get a piece of paper at the end does not mean that the journey is done and you're never going to go to another course again. It's far from true. Aaron, have you had experience with your business owners as far as their continuing education skills or programs or, self regimens that they're doing for themselves or their staff?
Okay, so this is a really interesting one. And I 100% agree. Like, education to get to the front of the line. But then once you are at the front of the line, you actually have to do the work. Okay. You have to
Mhm.
practice. One of my favorite quotes is champions watch game footage. Right. So
Mm.
if you think about elite sports, every single athlete, whether they run the 100 meters or they're swimming or they play basketball, they go back to their locker room, they go back with their coach, and they review their performance to see how they can do better. And they practice and they practice and they practice. So I bring that up because you mentioned, formal training and education like weekend courses or things like that. Now, no two people that I've come across are the same. You and I
Mhm.
could take the same weekend course. We're both now certified injectors, let's just say,
Yep.
but it matters more what you do with that education. Are you practicing? Are you, as you mentioned, right? You have to have hustle, you have to have grit, okay? Because the course itself is just the gateway into starting. That does not
Yes.
mean you are done and dusted, okay? That is the very beginning. And every time you take a course, this is just the beginning for you to build that muscle, put in practice, put in work, and refine your skills. So, first and foremost, over anything, you can take a course by, a world renowned place and not get the same thing out of it that someone else did. Because
Right.
again, no two people are the same. So I say that because, obviously I have a program that people go through and there are vastly different results based on the effort, the practice, the showing up, the commitment, the refinement, and the ability to keep showing up, making mistakes to get better. Okay.
Yep.
So let's just start with that.
Like, do business owners, like, ask you about, like, how much training should I do myself? Like, if they're
Oh,
still
yeah. So,
injecting?
okay. So, with that said, there are some businesses that I work with where they've only been injecting, let's say, 3 to 5 years, and
Mhm.
other businesses that I work with that have been injecting over 15 years. And at the end of the day, I'm not the person that says, like, yes, you have a good technique or not. The market, the business that you've built, your team, like all of those people are a reflection, if you're doing well or not, right? Like,
Right.
you have to have some kind of gauge of your own professional like know-how through your clients, through the practice that you built, through your team, through your community. What I tell people is when you decide to make this a career and you decide that whether it's different parts of aesthetics, especially if you are an injector, be prepared to be a forever student.
Yep.
The market is changing all the time, which means you then have to learn new marketing skills, whether that's social media or on the internet, right? You have to move with the market. There's actual technology. You have to upgrade your skill set every single year, right? And
Mhm.
let's also look at the actual products you're using, the techniques that are coming out, some things that were trendy. Like, I don't know about you, but I remember, and this is not to say this is good or bad, I'm just giving you my experience. There was a big boom, and maybe you guys didn't experience it the same way we did in Canada. I
Mhm.
want to say it was like 2 years ago with thread lifts.
Yeah,
Okay,
there was
well,
always a trend, right?
it was
Yeah.
huge here in Canada, and I just bring this up around training and education, okay? It was a trend. Now, does it work for some? Yes, no. I'm not the judge and jury on that, but what I
Mhm.
can tell you is I had a handful of clients at that time rush to be part of an educational weekend. They bought the plane ticket, they paid for the hotel, they paid for the actual training. It was, I want to say, upwards of $10,000 for this weekend training, okay?
Yep.
And in less than 6 months, they stopped performing the treatment because of, for whatever reason, whether it was the type of product they were using, the way it was taught, I don't actually know. My point here is they invested all this time, energy, and resources and money into
Yep.
going to this training. And 6 months later, it was come to find out that, oh, you can't do it that way, or it wasn't really approved. And everything just was a complete wash. And,
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
can those kind of things that can be, good for your business where you're investing in a weekend or a conference or, some kind of workshop, and you come out and you practice your skill and you start to really get good at that thing that you learned. Or the absolute opposite is like you were trying to jump on a trend, you didn't do your proper research, you were going with the crowd, and all of a sudden you find yourself without, able to practice or whatever it might be. So, when people ask me, I usually just ask them, "What do you want?
Mhm.
What do you really want with your business?" Right? Because if you don't have a very clear direction of where you're going as a business owner or an injector, I can't help you decide if that investment of time or money is going to be worth it. Right. So, yeah, I think, I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole with more the education piece in the sense of for me as a business coach, when I'm talking hard numbers with a client and they don't have any bottom line at the end of the year, and we look at, planning for the next year and what training and education they should go to, because it is absolutely important and absolutely necessary. But I typically look at what has given you the most ROI, or how were you able to not just accumulate a new skill or accumulate education or rub elbows with that famous Instagram, injector,
Mhm.
is that actually helping your top line, your bottom line, helping your practice, helping your patients? I look at it in that sense. What about you?
100% agree. I think that with any kind of training or educational conference, whatever it is, like it's not just a weekend getaway. Everything looks great on Instagram, but conferences are not like the most fun, in my opinion. They're very long days. Conference rooms are freezing. You're not just like sitting by the pool, like drinking martinis all day. Like, I mean, if you take it seriously and you plan it out thoughtfully, and you're investing in yourself and you're actually learning, like it's a pretty hefty investment personally and financially. So I agree. You do have to make sure that you have a plan for the training. Like if you're going to learn a certain technique, like the first thing that comes to my mind, there's Arthur Swift is huge. He has a specific technique. He does conferences all around the country with Sebastian Cotofana. He has a specific technique. So if you're going to learn that, you want to make sure that when you come back from your training, you have a bunch of patients lined up that you can practice those techniques that you just learned on. And I will say that my injectors are very good with that. They really are mindful about planning out not only what they're doing for that training event, but how they're going to apply what they just learned and spent all that money on soon after. Because I think, just like I mean, I know for me personally, like if I learn something, like I have to like practice it. I need to use my hands, my eyes, whatever. I need to use it or I'm going to forget about it. It's like just going to any other conference, taking notes, and you're like, yeah, I'm so like amped about doing this change. And you don't do that change within your business. Guess what? You just wasted all that time and money. You have to really be mindful. And I think when you start going to conferences, like it's exciting. Yes, you're networking and meeting a lot of people, but you have to make sure that you are not doing things that are redundant, things that are going to be beneficial. So you don't want to like keep just doing the same thing over and over. You need to experience different conferences. There are some that are international that, I would like to do after going to US conferences for the past 3+ years. But, just be mindful of what the goal is, I think is the summary of my long-winded soliloquy there.
No, I agree. I agree because there are so many like past clients or whatever that I've, worked with. And then they're like, oh, yeah, well, me and the team, we're going to this education seminar. We're going to this thing and it's costing, let's say $7,000.
Mhm.
But yet they were like, so I don't really know that we're ready to invest with you and work with you. And I'm like, so you just told me your business isn't where you want it to be. You're not really making a ton of profit or you're not paying yourself and you think the best investment is to go to a conference and learn another skill when you're not even selling the skill you already have. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's a whole other conversation. Hey, it's Erin here. We're just cutting in real quick to remind you if you're finding value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe at injectorbusinessblueprint.com. Never miss an episode and get access to exclusive content and tools that we share only with our subscribers. All right, thanks for sticking with us. Now, let's dive back into the episode and keep building the practice you love. I wanted to
Yes.
ask you, Brandon, going back to the training and the education, because you help practice managers, I help practice owners. And
Mhm.
for the most part, practice managers are practice owners and vice versa, and
Mhm.
lead providers. But the thing with the training and education, and, as we kind of are getting closer to the end of the year, and I know previous episodes we've talked about end of the year performance and marketing and things like that when you're a practice manager or practice owner and you're like looking at your budget or you're looking at like what we should invest in over the course of the next year, is that like what types of training and education, like how do you make that decision for what your team gets exposed to in terms of training or online courses, or if they get to go to a conference, or like is there a specific like way that you guys decide that for your business?
That's a great question. So, I never really thought about this too much, but, I invest in myself too. From a practice manager standpoint, I always wanted to like belong to a group and being a nurse too. Like I was always a part of an association. So, I actually looked at my numbers in 2023 and I myself spent $10,000 in traveling and going to conferences. And the more shocking fact is I probably spoke at half of them. So I didn't even pay registration fees. So I still like had I been, not speaking, I would have spent several $1,000s more. And that's from a practice manager standpoint. You go to a cadaver lab, that could be $5,000 in itself. So I think there's a lot of things you need to consider when trying to forecast. So, what kind of training is it? Is it a specific technique? Is it something that's already like, like a Swift conference that already has like a high price tag? Is it a cadaver course that you need to learn that anatomy and physiology? But also, are you ready for those level conferences? Like if you're a newer injector 1 to 2 years, you might not need to go to that $5,000 conference. You might need to start something that has the essentials that you need that you can build on to maybe make everything a little bit more solidified in your mind as far as like process and technique further down the road. So it's a great opportunity now to kind of review those goals with your providers, with your team to see like, do you think you're ready for XYZ? Have you found benefit from the conference you went to in March, for example? What did you find? And make it a process and kind of standard to come back from a conference and debrief and, maybe educate, teach back, what call it what you want. Have your providers show you if you didn't go with them, like what did they learn? What did they retain? How did they implement it into practice? Because all of those factors I think go into the budgeting for the next year. And if you have the capacity from a business owner standpoint to provide a stipend of X amount of dollars per year for training and education, with the expectation that maybe the provider kicks in a little bit more, because in my eyes, I don't think, a business owner should be responsible for 100% of travel expenses and conference ticket. Absolutely not. I think this is widely variable too, because some business owners may be national trainers, they may be speakers. So there may be opportunity to bring a group at a discount, which is a benefit. And they need to realize that is, part of like the benefits package. So there's a lot of nuances with it, but it's just something that you have to really sit down and have an open and honest conversation with your team about goals and expectations.
100% expectations. It's like, as you're saying that and I'm listening to you, I am so much more I'm such a hard ass. Like, if
You
it's
are, but that's okay. That's
if
why
it's
people love
me,
you.
like, only because what I've learned in the way that I've kind of run practices before and run spas before is like the proof is in the numbers. Always, always, always. If you don't
Mhm.
know where you stand, check your numbers, right? And if the business, aka me as the owner, if I'm investing in you, there is an expectation. So, yes, 100% agree. You have to be really clear that, like, this is an exchange. I'm not sending you on a trip to have like a balls to the wall weekend. Okay.
Mhm.
You're going to go, you're going to learn a skill set, you're going to come back, and we're going to make money off of that new skill set. Now, that's
Mhm.
why I say I'm a hard ass because I'm like, I want to see an ROI. Okay.
Mhm.
I will give a reasonable amount of time, right? But at the same time, like, I'm not doing this so that you could just have a ball and have a blast and then come back and be like, oh my God, I'm so hungover. Like, that's not
Mhm.
why we're sending you. So, yes, I want you to have fun, but you can have fun after you've really honed in on the reason why we sent you in the first place. And again, we could be sending you because you have poor performance and we need to build up your confidence. So you need to gain a new skill set. Or it could be that you are looking to increase to the way that you earn your income. And so therefore, you need to add a new modality to the list of techniques or things that you offer,
Mhm.
and therefore it needs to be reflected in my monthly revenue or my P&L so I can track that my investment has been worth it. So I know as well as the owner, I should continue to reinvest resources into this person because they, once they get the resources to get that kind of support, they are growing, they're developing, and because of that they show up as the best version of them, which
Mhm.
then helps my business and my dream, right? That helps me most. So I think, when we talk about training and education, it's so important, but it also has to make good dollars and cents, right? I'm currently in Canada, I'm in Toronto, and they
Mhm.
sent a couple people to California for this, like, oh, we're doing a workshop over the weekend. And I'm like, what is the expectation? Were you very clear? Are you having a daily check in with them? Are you
Mhm.
giving them assignments where you can quantify or at least have them kind of say back to you what they've learned and how they plan to utilize that new skill? Like, I think these are important conversations to have. And you mentioned this, it can be a benefit, right? So maybe
Yep.
instead of medical benefits, you get X amount of dollars toward training and education. But it doesn't
Mhm.
mean we want you to squander it either. Doesn't mean that
Right.
like we're just going to pay for you to go have a great weekend in, Hawaii and then, get a tan and you came back with nothing. That's still not a
Absolutely.
good that's not a good way to use the resource. But for me again, it's just dollars and cents in terms of if I'm investing in you, there's a certain amount that I need back.
100%. And I think that, you can use those things in like conferences and training in so many other ways. Like you can use it to credential yourself whenever you're consulting with your patients because you should be sharing it on social media. Your patients are seeing it. They're not seeing you like drunk by the pool, or at a club at 12 a.m. in Vegas. But if you're getting a picture with the famous injectors, what have you, like that helps credential and give yourself, a little bit of esteem in the community because aesthetics is a profession. It's not an industry. These are medical procedures. Like, I think the seriousness needs to kind of be interjected. And unfortunately, the laxity of some of the laws has prevented that in the US. And,
I think
it's,
social media also glamorizes
oh,
a little
100%.
bit, right? So, when I think about training and education, yeah, some people, like, it's very obvious that they will go to a workshop or a conference
Hmm.
just for the photo op. Like,
Yep.
again, why? If you are
Right.
sending someone or even, as yourself, and maybe you're guilty of doing this in the past, but the thing is, like, it really needs to pay you back in some way and, holding your team accountable to actually bring back that skill back to our practice and showcase, as you mentioned, right? It's like puts
Yep.
us in a higher status of, we're all XYZ trained, or we've done,
Hmm.
training at this institute, or we're all a certain amount of certification. Like those things really do matter. And I think social media has definitely made it seem a little bit more glamorous, right? Because as we said in the opener, right? Like it actually is rocket science because
Yes.
you need to know your stuff. You can't, like, I would say, you can't be like doing the basement Botox stuff and
Hmm.
also try to be legitimate at the same time. And I'm not talking about home based businesses. Everyone's got to start somewhere. But what
Right.
I mean is like doing things under the table or in a way where it's not legal or you're not abiding by state laws, right? Like you have to do all of that.
No, you can't practice
It's
malpractice.
just yeah, you said it's a real profession, and I think sometimes social media glamorizes it, and therefore it can be easily forgotten how much
Hmm.
training and education you all do.
Absolutely. And I think that this kind of wraps up into, talking about compensation and understanding like it's not just about the salary or hourly wage or commission that you make. The investment in you is part of your total compensation package. So we're not going to get into the hourly wages for NPs or RNs because that's a whole nother episode or a whole nother novel. You need to really emphasize that, yeah, you know what? I spent $10,000 on you on training last year. You need to realize and be grateful for that opportunity because you're not paying that out of pocket. There's so many training opportunities that can be, free or part of a vendor training or a part of like the all over account package when you sign on with particular companies. And it just boggles my mind sometimes when people will sign up for those opportunities and it's events that like I coordinate with those reps and people do not show up and it is the most honestly it's disgusting to me because I know people that would claw over each other for those opportunities and you simply say I have a headache, I can't come that day.
Oh my god, I can't.
Take a Tylenol and get your shit together and get to that training because
Well, also
people
because time is money.
yes, time
Even
is
if it's
yeah,
even if it's considered free, like free, I'm making air quotes in case you're not seeing, like,
yeah.
even if it's free, and as you mentioned, like, even if it's put on by a vendor and it's, a part of your vendor package or whatever, it's not free. I
No.
promise you it's not free. That business owner, that practice manager, people put time, money, resources into this. They built that
Yes.
relationship. They reserve time. Here's the other thing. If you are taken out of your practice and you're in a free, I'm making air quotes again, free education seminar, that means you're not earning money in that practice, okay? So
Mhm.
time is money. So
Yes.
100%, I can't stand the no showing, the flaking, the this, the that, and it's like, you're right. People would really give, like, a limb so that they can be a part of that, so that they can be in a better position for themselves, for their business, for their
Yes.
future, for their family. Training and education doesn't need to be taken lightly. It doesn't have to be so serious all the time either. But when you have someone or a group of people who are willing to invest in you, invest in your future, invest in your ability to generate more income and break through whatever generational shit you might be going through, like,
Mhm.
don't forget that there's someone behind all of that who made a decision that you are worthy to get that benefit. Don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, that's a really good summary. So I think we'll wrap
I've
up
been
this episode
pricey.
with that.
I
I
can
love
say.
that. Do not bite the hand that feeds you, 100%. But always continue to learn and invest in yourself, but also just have that conversation and see what gaps you need to fill and how your owner practice manager can help you do that. Any final thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think training and education, being a forever student, will only pay you back in dividends in
Hmm.
some way or another, whether that's the people you're able to work with, the impact that you make, yourself maybe opening up your own practice, like the money that you make, it will come back to you. And
Hmm.
so, committing to being the best version of you, whatever that looks like, will require you to show up. And the more that you lean in, the more you're going to get back.
Yep, 100%. And doing it safely.
Yes. Yes, it has to
Most
be safe.
importantly.
It has to be safe.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Injector Business Blueprint. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we will join you shortly for another episode of fun and tips to help this journey feel a little bit less lonely. Have a
Thank
great day.
you. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Injector's Business Blueprint. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you investing some of it with us. Comment, like, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to continue the journey with us to push through those fears, doubts, and roadblocks to make the journey a little less lonely. So until next time, don't forget, you're blessed to be stressed.